Is there a new offensive in the offing, do you think, and could Belarus be involved?
It's very difficult to tell. I mean, it's a much vaunted meeting between Lukaschenkow and Putin's been on the cards for a while. We're clearly not aware of what the objective is. Clearly, Belarus does provide a lot of military training for Russia, has also provided lots of military equipment, tanks and equipment to help support the war. Putin would love to get Belarus more intimately involved in this war. And although Putin and Lukashenko are political allies, the Belarusian people and the military do not want to get involved in this war at all. So it makes life very, very difficult. In terms of why Kyiv and why the focus on that, well, clearly it's the capital, but it's also the centre of gravity for Ukraine. In other words, the source of power. So inevitably, Russia will be interested in could it take it. From a military perspective, the Russian border is quite some way away from Kyiv, and therefore, if you were going to mount a military attack, you'd want to go up to the north and down through Belarus, which makes it a lot easier to mount that attack. You'd also need to have a very substantial military force behind you, not only equipment, but also people. Russia did mount 300,000 people. It recruited its mobilisation. 150,000 of those, half of them are already involved in the battle. The other 150,000 should be finished their training early part of next year, so potentially Russia would have the troops to do it. The challenge, though, is that if you remember back in spring this year, Russia had a spectacular failure trying to take Kiev. Then they will have learnt the lessons from that, but so will Ukraine. It will be an extremely difficult nut for Russia to crack.
Meanwhile, the airstrikes are continuing in Kiev. Do you think that will be Russia's policy from now on? It will just continue with the bombardments throughout the winter?
Well, yeah, they have been bombarding across the whole country, but we've seen 3 attacks on Kiev in the last week, all through drone attacks, and it looks likely Russia's recently taken a resupply of the Iranian Shahed 136 drones, which would explain the attacks. The Ukrainian defence systems claim that they've shot 30 of the 35 down, but some still get through, and even those that get shot down, the pieces tend to land all over the place. This does seem to be attacking the civilian population, eroding their will to support the war, particularly at a really difficult time of the year, and try to erode support for Zelensky. Harsh reality is that quite the opposite's probably occurring. In terms of overall, not much fighting movement on the ground, but intense fighting around Bakhmut. Again, we've reported before about the Wagner group, the mercenary group leading on that with their use of convicts. Huge casualty rates, largely seem to be driven by tactics of the Wagner group that see the convicts as expendable, one of those harsh brutalities of war. On a slightly lighter note, though, Russians are very concerned about the morale of their soldiers. Therefore, they are deploying musicians in to try to entertain the troops. It's called a creative brigade. From my experience, the military, particularly on operations, I think the conscripts will be much more focused on casualty rates, poor leadership, lack of pay, lack of ammunition, lack of poor equipment and the like. But just maybe Putin's right, maybe a Christmas carol might help.